February 20th. So as we know, we take up items in the order they're on the agenda. And we have a clipboard here, so if you're want to have priority status or get any notification of what's happening relative to different items on the agenda, please sign the clipboard sometime during the meeting. I won't say anything about the acoustics since we're in a different room tonight. So the first item tonight is the agenda. We have no real changes on the agenda, even though one item is asking for what time. Well, I guess we'll get to it under 287 Shelburne Street, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other changes on the agenda?
Nope.
Communications, I don't see any communications. Is that true?
Correct.
Okay. Minutes, we have minutes from February 5th meeting here. So that's in a packet so people can look at it. That's great. So the first item, next item is the consent agenda. First item on the consent agenda is 189, 191 South Champlain Street. Applicant here, you want to? So this is on the consent agenda, which, you know, Ann knows this is, you have the staff's recommendations.
We do.
You're okay with their recommendation?
We reviewed them. Yep, we're all right.
Anybody on the board have any objections to treating this as consent? No? Anybody here in the audience for 189, 191? Well, it's a nice project. It's too bad we can't show it in its full detail. You know, we can just. Anyway, but I guess we'll see the real thing at some point in the future.
We had a good show at the DA meeting. You missed it, right?
We're not invited to those. Okay, can I have a motion on 189, 191 South Champlain?
Sure. On
Okay.
19-0401CA 189 to 191 South Champlain, I move that we approve the application and adopt staff's findings and recommendations and conditions.
Second? Anything? Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is a nice part. Look forward to seeing it happen.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Okay. The next item, public hearing, is 410 North Street. Applicant here? Okay. So this is a request for time extension, and it actually sounds like a couple of modifications on the original approval.
Yep.
Anybody else here for 410? Just you. Okay, so can I raise your right hand? You swear to tell the truth and whole truth under pain and penalty of perjury.
I do.
Want to introduce yourself, and I think you've probably seen the staff reports they're recommending approval.
Yeah.
Name first.
Yeah, so my name's Scott Goodwin. I own the property at 410 North Street. So 2 years ago, I applied for a, I guess more than about 2.5 years ago, I applied for a accessory dwelling, renovate the garage into a accessory dwelling, and I've done all the work myself, so it's been taking me a while. And then I also, last summer, I added a addition onto the existing building, and the one outstanding item I have left is to install a sprinkler system. And actually, I've gone through 3 contractors, and it's such a small building that no one really wants to do it. So I finally have someone lined up. They're actually starting tomorrow, ironically. And I should be able to close out the project in the next month or so. And then what you flash in front of you is
yeah, it's kind of like reminding me that it doesn't like to stay steady, so they must have got it on clearance.
There you go. So when I initially applied for the project, I needed to add an extra parking space. I had one, yeah, right there where Ryan's pointing to, and then 2 in the garage. And I really didn't want to park 2 cars in the garage, so I could have extra storage. Now that I renovated the whole space, I'm down to 0 storage. And I ended up fitting, I was a little confused about a couple of the zoning standards. And once I understood that, I figured a way to fit the 3 parking spaces in between the house and the garage, which seemed to work.
And part of the thing was that you were gonna have added a second bay in the garage, and you're not doing that now, you stay with
Yeah,
one bay.
yeah.
One thing I'm curious about is, I'm not gonna look at that.
Yeah.
The entrance is on the back side of the building for the accessory apartment, is
It's,
that?
well, yeah, so I have 2 entrances. I have one that's through the garage, so I'll still have the one garage door. And then, can't show on this plan, but.
Through the garage door?
Yeah, so through the garage door gets you into the garage space, and then there's.
Yeah, but a person's not gonna,
No, not, you don't open the garage to go.
No, yeah, so there's, I wish I brought the whole plans. But yeah, so there's that garage space that you're looking at now, and then that shaded gray is where the actual accessory dwelling is.
yeah.
And then there's an addition that I built this summer that's off of that. So there's also a side door that enters onto the east side.
Okay, so that's, unless I'm mistaken, that's not in our plan? Yeah. Is it? No.
No, that's not before us.
So, this is Ryan's?
Yeah.
So, we don't have a plan of what he's discussing, is that right?
Well, it wasn't part of the discussion for tonight, I guess. This,
Yeah, his
'cause
addition.
he had, yeah, the
The
addition
parking-
was approved, but the parking is in front of you tonight.
Okay.
The change.
Well, what I'm concerned about is that the entrance into the accessory apartment right now is on the, what we have shows on the back of the building with no way to get to it.
Well, is Exhibit C the one that shows both the garage and the accessory
Yeah.
dwelling? So it just shows a distance, kind of.
But you're saying there's no walkway or sidewalk?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, there's no walkway to get there along the side of the building.
Because, but the parking was originally in the garage for the ADU, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I just wanna make sure that we're.
Is the door around the right-hand corner there, or?
That's on the back.
Yeah, so there's a door, can I point the screen?
Yeah. Why
Make it stop flickering while
So,
you're-
yeah, there's a garage door right here, and then there's a man door right here. So that's one way in, and then there's,
So there's no way to get into that garage door through a man door or a person door?
no, there's, this garage door is staying.
Right, but a person doesn't really wanna walk through a garage door to enter his apartment.
So you got a door on the back.
Yeah, then I also have a door on the back.
Right, with no path.
With,
to-
well, I've done so many zoning permits, I can't remember which one, but I also, I'm building a walkway next summer. That's part of, I think, the 3rd zoning permit.
Is there any issue with the?
Yeah, because he's got the property, this is the easement right here, this
Yeah.
whole thing.
Yeah.
So he's got the path going along the whole way, that was originally permitted in the original approval, I believe.
That
And
was
it certainly
in the
is
second or third.
readdressed in the second or third.
Oh, okay.
zoning
I
permit.
only know.
Well, it's not on
that-
this one, yeah, but.
Well,
it's not
that's,
shown on that
that
plan.
is an issue, because that's what we have to look at.
Interesting, okay, sure.
And so,
Well, we could
make approval
Is there,
contingent upon.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Is there a site lot coverage issue?
No.
No, okay.
No, I'm not-
And it's already been addressed in previous permits, the
Okay.
access walkway.
Well, we need a plan, you would want a plan showing the parking with the connection.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, cause it's not, well, if you did park there, you could go through the garage, I guess.
But we
You
just,
don't wanna walk around.
if we approve a modified plan with parking that way, we should show the walkway, I think.
Yeah, so I guess in our approval, we can ask for
Yeah.
drawings that
I
actually
have
show
I
what
have it all,
you're
I have it
describing.
all drafted up already, so I just didn't include it on this plan.
That's the only problems I had, was that things were inconsistent.
Yeah.
And I understand you applied for zoning permits, you also had a suit against it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why, it's been I think when it initially approved from you guys, it was about 2.5 years, 3 years ago.
I remember this one.
Yeah, okay. Any other questions to the applicant? We're gonna close the public hearing, and we'll probably deliberate later tonight.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. We're done for now.
Okay.
And when we deliberate, you don't have to participate in the deliberation, you can leave and or stay if you want to.
I might as well stay.
Okay.
I would say.
So the next item on the agenda is 287 Shelby Street, City of Burlington School Department.
Hey Brad, I think you just said we're closing the public hearing. Maybe we should reopen it just for process. You just said we're closing the public hearing.
For him, yeah.
Just for that one.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's a public hearing for that item.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Now-
this is other business.
This other business.
Okay.
I wasn't closing the meeting. That's what you thought.
Okay.
The meeting is not
That's
adjourned.
usually what we say when the meeting is.
No,
Yeah.
we actually see
Okay.
we're adjourned,
Great,
but we're not.
great.
It must be the room, it's very confusing down here, that's what it is, has us all thrown off. Anyway, so the next item, City of Burlington School District request for a time extension for construction of a two-story building with a 10,000 square foot footprint, of which we've never seen anything, is that true?
You haven't seen it, right? And
Okay.
this is, to be clear, this is not a permit extension, this is an extension of the application.
Right.
So, DRB has in its bylaws something similar that says an application can be pending for 6 months and up to 2 extensions.
Yeah.
That has been, since been codified in the zoning code, right, which is why this is before you. So this application started in June, right? So it's been 6 months. I reached out to Marty just before 6 months, and because of scheduling, it's closer to 7 at this point. But they're seeking an initial extension to keep that application alive, as opposed to withdrawing it and reapplying.
Do we have to take testimony on this, or can we just discuss it? The question is, do we swear somebody in? This is not shown as a public hearing, so.
Yes, you should get testimony.
Okay, so
It's
I'm gonna have you
other business
swear, yeah.
because it's not being reviewed on the merits.
Okay. You swear to tell the truth and whole truth on pain and penalty of perjury.
I do.
And can you introduce yourself?
My name is Marty Spalding. I'm the Director of Property Services for Burlington School District.
And it's sort of a brief explanation in our packet. Maybe you just explain the reason for the extension.
I'll give you a little background. So the school district, we're in dire need to increase preschool space in our schools. So we had initial proposal to renovate our Ira Allen building for a preschool center. For various different reasons, we changed directions and we started.
Might just turn it off.
And we designed a concept of having a south end preschool center. It was going to be a 5-classroom preschool center with administration on the 2nd floor. And then we're also going to have a 5-classroom preschool addition off of our Smith property.
Wait.
We submitted an application, we got through the process of submitting the application for the south end project at 287. This is located on our property services building on Shelburne Road, that site. Once we started through the public comment process, there was enough contention from the community about changing the direction from that initial plan to have a preschool center at our 150 Colchester Avenue site. That we kind of put the project on hold. We created a pre-K task force. That task force is currently looking at all of the options for our preschool, focusing mostly on does it make sense to have this preschool center at 150 Colchester Avenue or these 2 north and south end preschool sites. That pre-K committee is their goal is to make a recommendation to our board by April. So this is the reason why I'm asking for the extension, because this project isn't necessarily dead in the water, and we're still in the process of moving forward to make a firm decision on where we're going to go with this project.
And is a 3-month extension realistic? If you're not getting a
If
decision?
you're going to give more, we'll take it. But I mean, I think it's realistic to say that our goal is to have an answer by April. So, hopefully,
But
we'll
then
be
the
in
assumption
a
is
better
you have-
position.
You have to do
Yeah.
plans and make.
Correct. But my understanding is we have the option for 2
months.
extensions.
Yeah.
Right. And you need to show progress. So we're showing progress at least at this stage. If we get to April and show more progress, then that would be the need to add that extra time.
You're optimistic.
Are the findings of the task force at all conditional on the vote in March?
No.
Or no?
Nope.
Any other questions for the applicant on this? That is really the extent of our agenda for tonight. Zoning amendments, is that,
Zoning amendments, yep.
you're gonna be,
You're gonna make us look at the blinking?
Yeah, sorry about that. It makes me think TRC for UVM's event center was here, and they were mortified it was doing the same thing.
that looks good right there. See, Marty?
Thanks.
See you, Marty.
Pleasure.
So this is in follow-up to our joint meeting, the idea of giving you guys a little additional information on amendments as they're made to the zoning code. So you all should have a zoning ordinance on the cover sheet that says it's amended through November of 2018. So you should look and see that that's actually the case. I talked to Lane, we'll produce an entire up-to-date ordinance for you all for the next meeting. But the idea has been to, rather than issue an entire CDO every year or two, to actually update it as the amendments are passed. So that said, since November, since the form code was adopted, we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 zoning amendments. So we'll just tick through those. So the St. Joseph's rezone, that's out on Allen Street, the St. Joseph's Co-Cathedral. That simply amounted to changing the zoning district boundary to make the property all neighborhood mixed use. You'll see on the map there, it used to be divided between residential medium and neighborhood mixed use. So this amendment simply made it all neighborhood mixed use.
Scott, does that include the little house right next to the church itself? Just curious.
East of the church.
So maddening. It includes
Yeah.
everything in here.
Okay.
So the little house, I see houses on the sides, not inside.
Okay.
There's a small building there.
Okay.
Make it
Thank you.
stop.
I'm just curious how far it goes.
Then we have a really giant zoning amendment. Food and beverage processing was a consolidation of multiple zoning uses that we had. Microbreweries, wineries, distilleries, and whatnot. But we forgot to adjust the parking requirements for that new combined use. And that's all that this zoning amendment was. Zoning amendment 1803. At risk of making you look more at this thing, all it was an update to the parking table.
And what did it result in?
It resulted in striking some of the former uses like bakery, right? So those are gone, and introduction of the new standard for food and beverage processing.
Scott, you're doing this off of the Explorer. You know, can you do this in preview mode rather than open the document? I'm wondering if that's going to make it not.
Yeah, it's not that, it's the connection.
Okay.
So, pretty minor amendment. Article 3 changes. This was a cleanup to appeal periods and deferrals and application extensions. I don't know how much we want to get into the weeds with this stuff. Most of the time, you guys don't deal with this stuff at all. This amendment established criteria and limits for permit extensions. Previously, the CDO said you could have an extension, didn't say how many or under what grounds to actually do it, right? And through practice, we kind of established 3 and said that, well, if you can still do it under the present code, you can do it now. So that's been codified now. So that's extensions. Skipping through the pages. permits have been changed. You'll see an item D below there. Zoning permits have been given a 3-year lifespan now as opposed to 2. You used to have a year to start, but now you have 2 to finish. Permits associated with violations are still a single year. Item B, permit appeal period there is sort of into the weeds, getting at potential for stays and DRB appeal periods. And deferral. So this is what we just considered tonight. So that's a new paragraph on the bottom. So it can be in the pipeline for 6 months. So the DRB application, you guys can extend it twice. So we've codified that. Again, deferrals would have happened and we didn't really have any guidelines as to how we dealt with them. Bike parking, so you may be familiar, the city adopted fairly recently I won't go through all this because it's agonizing to look at. I'll just speak to the item. So, planned bike walk was adopted a couple years ago, right? And in that it had recommendations for updating the bike parking standards and to enable some additional flexibility. So like the vehicular parking standards, there's a table for bike parking for various uses. That was revamped and updated. More significantly, I think the amendment introduced an in lieu payment option. So if your site is such that you physically can't produce all the required bike parking, long versus short term on site, you actually make a payment to the city, and that will be used to produce more publicly available bike parking.
On public land somewhere?
Yeah. Yeah, basically in the city sidewalk, parkland, basically a public resource. A similar provision was made that the developer can go ahead and put bike parking within the public right-of-way for that project. It's a little bit different than the in lieu payment. It basically allows you to put your bike racks in the sidewalk, right, subject to Public Works review and approval. So bike parking standards have been revamped and updated. So this section, oh God, it's terrible to look at. All right.
I think it's
I'll just
really
tell you
impossible to
words,
look
too.
at that, so I think turning it off would be a better thing. I don't know if anybody else.
All right.
Yeah.
There, it's done.
Mine
tell
show
us.
now.
I know, right? All right, so section 353 of the zoning code. Used to be conditional use of major impact exemptions. Before that, it was just major impact exemptions. When the conditional use standards were revamped several years ago, conditional use got thrown into the major impact exemptions and had the effect of exempting pretty much all conditional uses, which was not the intent. So section 353 exemptions is now just major impact exemptions, as was originally the case. So disappointed in my show here. 2 more amendments. You're all familiar with City Market, South End. They came in, got their approval from this board. Their building was a little bit larger than the 30,000 square foot limit that they were allowed. And we kind of had to go through some contortions about, all right, well, we'll separate this office space for third-party use, and here's our cafe, and so the grocery store is less than 30,000. So, per their request, they came back and said, gee, you know, we'd actually like to expand into the total building volume, right? So, in order to do that, the ceiling needed to be bumped up. So we said, are you sure you really mean 35K this year? So the ceiling has now moved from 30,000 to 35,000 square feet. So City Market, if they so choose, can expand to their entire building envelope. And last but not least, without getting into mind-bending discussions about fractions and decimal points, residential density calculations has been revamped, section 527. The short explanation is the density calculation used a lot of undefined terms in the zoning code, talked about development site, things like that. And we all kind of knew what they meant, and it kind of told us about the math. But we replaced the undefined terms, like development site, and referred specifically to defined terms like lot, so we know what we're talking about. We've got defined term in there. And we've spelled out in more detail the calculation, how far out we bring the decimal, and rounding. So, said very briefly, we've simply cleaned up and clarified how residential density is calculated in the residential zones. So, all that said, you guys will get a completed CDO at our next meeting, but after that, we'll hand you the updated articles as they're changed, as opposed to an entirely new ordinance.
The electronic
And
version.
we'll figure out the non-blinking display next time.
Will the updates, like as they get done interimly, be available on the, will they be inserted into the electronic version of the CDO that's
Yes.
online?
Yes.
You just got paper updates a month ago,
Yes.
But
I have a
that's-
couple more for you.
but that didn't include what you just went through.
You have everything that I went through tonight except for the density calculation and the conditional use exemption, or you should have. And if you don't, you'll have it all at our next meeting anyhow.
Good.
But yeah, it will be updated online as well.
A lot of work happening.
That's it.
Okay, any questions on that display? Scott? No? Okay. With that, that's the last item on our agenda. Unless anybody has any other business? We are adjourned.
So we deliberate?
I see no reason not to unless people object. We're here, 5:29. So we have two items. One of them is 410 North Street and the other is 287 Shelby Street.